Welcome to another Luck Scout bedtime story. The Path of Self-Reliance. In a small, quiet village on the edge of a vast forest, there lived a young man named Arik. He was known for his kind heart and gentle spirit, but despite his efforts, life had not been easy for him. His family had always struggled, and no matter how hard he worked, it seemed that prosperity was always just out of reach. For a long time, Arik believed that help would come from those around him. He turned to friends, family and neighbors, hoping that someone would step in to offer support or guidance. But time and time again, they turned their heads, too busy with their own lives or simply unwilling to help. Even his closest family, those he thought would stand by him no matter what, seemed distant, uninterested in his struggles. At first this left Arik feeling disappointed and alone. He couldn't understand why no one would help him, and the more he reached out, the more isolated he felt. The world, which had once seemed full of possibility, now felt cold and indifferent. It was a painful realization, but in the quiet of those lonely nights, a new thought began to take root in Arik's mind. What if no one was meant to help? What if the only person he could truly rely on was himself? One evening, as the last light of the sun faded behind the trees, Arik sat by the fire, thinking deeply. He realized that waiting for someone else to lift him out of his struggles would only lead to more disappointment. If he was going to change his life, he needed to do it on his own. It was in that moment beneath the stars that Arik made a decision. He would stop relying on others and rely only on his own strength, his own determination. From that point forward, he would take full responsibility for his journey. The next morning, Arik awoke with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt before. He understood now that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but that didn't frighten him. What frightened him was the idea of remaining where he was, waiting for someone to save him instead of taking control of his own future. And so, without hesitation, he set out to carve a new path for himself. Arik knew that the village had little to offer in terms of opportunity, so he decided to venture beyond its borders into the unknown. His family and neighbors watched as he prepared to leave, some offering doubtful looks, others giving half-hearted wishes of luck. But Arik didn't mind anymore. He had stopped expecting their support, and in its absence he found a quiet strength building within him. He packed what little he had, took a deep breath and began walking down the path that led into the forest. The forest was vast and unfamiliar, but Arik didn't let that discourage him. Each step he took reminded him that he was moving forward, that he was taking control of his destiny. With every passing day, he grew more confident in his ability to rely on himself. He learned to hunt for his own food, to navigate by the stars, and to find water in the streams that wound through the trees. Though the journey was difficult, it filled him with a sense of pride and purpose he had never known before. As Arik ventured deeper into the forest, he faced many challenges. There were nights when the cold wind bit at his skin, and days when the rain seemed endless, soaking him to the bone. There were moments when doubt crept into his mind, whispering that perhaps he wasn't strong enough, that perhaps he had made a mistake in leaving behind the safety of his village. In those moments, It would have been easy to turn back, to return to the familiar, even if it meant accepting the disappointment he had felt before. But each time doubt tried to settle in, Arik reminded himself of the promise he had made. No one else was coming to save him. No one else would walk this path for him. He was his own strength, his own guide, and the only one responsible for his success. One stormy night, when the wind howled and the trees swayed violently above him, Arik found shelter in a small cave. As he listened to the storm rage outside, he reflected on how far he had come. There had been no one to help him, and yet he had survived. More than that, he had thrived in ways he hadn't thought possible. In the depths of that storm, Arik realized that the strength he had been searching for had always been inside him. It just needed to be awakened. The next morning, as the storm passed and the sky cleared, Arik emerged from the cave feeling renewed. The forest, which had seemed so daunting when he first set out, now felt like an ally. A place that had tested him, challenged him, and ultimately shown him his true strength. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm light over the trees, and Arik knew that he was no longer the same person who had left the village weeks before. He continued his journey with a new sense of confidence, no longer seeking approval or help from anyone else. He knew that he was capable of forging his own path, no matter how difficult it might be. And as he moved forward, he began to notice small signs of success, opportunities that he hadn't seen before, doors that began to open simply because he had chosen to walk his own way. It wasn't long before Arik stumbled upon a small town at the edge of the forest. The town was bustling with trade, and its people welcomed him warmly. They admired his resilience and the strength he had built during his journey. Arik found work easily, and over time he built a life for himself, one filled with opportunity and prosperity, not because anyone had given it to him, but because he had earned it through his own determination. Years later, Arik returned to his village, not as the struggling young man he had once been, but as a man who had learned the true meaning of self-reliance. The people of the village were surprised to see how much he had changed, how much he had accomplished on his own. Some even regretted not offering him help when he needed it. But Arik held no bitterness in his heart. He knew that the challenges he had faced alone had made him stronger, more capable, and more resilient than he could have ever imagined. As the villagers gathered around him, asking him how he had succeeded, Arik shared the lesson he had learned. There will be times in life when no one comes to help, when even those closest to you turn away. But in those moments, do not despair. For within you lies all the strength you need to succeed. Rely on yourself, trust in your own persistence, and never give up. Even when the road feels difficult, you are your own greatest ally, and with that, you will always find a way. As you lie in your bed tonight, dear Luck Scouter, remember that the strength you seek is already within you. You are capable of facing any challenge, of walking any path, even when it feels like the world has turned away. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let go of your worries. Trust in your own resilience and know that with persistence and self-reliance, you can build the life you dream of, no matter how difficult the journey may seem.